Welcome back to the deep dive.
Eh.
Today we're taking on an ancient organizational mandate. And really it's a masterclass in crisis leadership and, I think, radical delegation.
Absolutely.
We're looking at excerpts from the Gospel of Matthew, and we're zeroing in on this really pivotal moment. It's where the ministry goes from, a solo operation
Right.
to something that's scaling exponentially. And it requires this immediate, very high-stakes management.
Yeah.
The sources we've gathered, they describe, a lightning-fast sequence. It starts with deep compassion, then this startling logistical assessment, the harvest metaphor, and then the immediate maximum transfer of authority to a new team, the 12.
It's an incredible sequence of events.
So if you are maybe confronting a situation where the scale of the need just feels overwhelming, or maybe you're grappling with how much power to actually entrust to your team, this dive is for you.
I think so.
Our mission here is to understand that link between empathy and executive action and why maximum empowerment was the only answer when the clock was ticking.
Well said.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So this passage is one of the most structurally important sections in the whole narrative. I mean, it really marks the transition from one person's ministry to a large-scale systematic organization. When we look at management techniques, we often look for blueprints, and this text gives us a perfect three-part structure.
Okay, what are they?
First, Jesus' active engagement. He's out there defining the scope of the problem just by observing.
He's on the ground.
Exactly. Second, he identifies the critical bottleneck, the human capital problem, with that harvest analogy. And third, he provides an immediate, radical response. He commissions and completely empowers his delegates.
So it's not a slow rollout.
No, you have to see this as a high-stakes, rapid response organizational moment. They needed to go from 0 to full deployment, instantly.
Precisely. Let's ground ourselves in that first section then, the catalyst of compassion.
Yeah.
This sets the whole strategic context in Matthew 9. The text emphasizes this, relentless activity.
Relentless is the right word.
Jesus isn't waiting for people to come to him. He's traveling throughout all the cities and villages. That implies a massive, almost exhausting scope.
And he's not specializing, which is crucial.
No. He's doing 3 very distinct, very demanding tasks at the same time. He's teaching in synagogues. That's complex knowledge transfer. He's proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, which is the core message delivery. And then third, he's healing every disease and every infirmity. That is hands-on, draining, physical problem solving.
It's a completely unsustainable workload for one person.
Exactly.
And this is where the emotion becomes the driving force, the catalyst for the whole organizational shift. The text is so clear. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them.
And this isn't just, a professional concern.
No, not at all. It's not just intellectual pity. The Greek word used here, it implies something visceral, a deeply physical empathy, a gut reaction.
Right.
So the mission isn't driven by a business plan. It's initiated by pathos, by this immediate, overwhelming concern for suffering.
That distinction is so key between intellectual concern and visceral compassion. And that genuine concern is then immediately justified by what he sees.
It is. The sources describe the crowd as harassed and helpless. Just think about that from a modern resource management perspective.
Right.
Harassed suggests they're troubled, tormented, just burdened by life, and helpless. That means they lack any resources, internal or external, to find direction. They're just paralyzed.
So we have a population that isn't just suffering, they're also completely directionless and vulnerable.
Exactly. And that leads to the critical metaphor that justifies the whole thing here. They were like sheep without a shepherd. That image just perfectly encapsulates the failure of existing leadership. A scattered flock is exposed, disorganized, and it can't self-direct. So the organizational response, the scaling of the mission, it's all founded on recognizing this profound chaos.
What's fascinating here is the huge organizational effort, it doesn't start with the spreadsheet. It starts with this profound, immediate compassion for how hard things were for people.
Seeing the acute human need is always the essential first step.
And that deeply felt observation of the scattered, harassed sheep, it just flows right into section 2, the logic of the harvest.
Right. Once you see the problem, you have to talk about resources.
So this gives us that famous strategic quote, and it shifts the frame from pastoral care to logistical analysis. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few.
The scope of work is vast, but the human resources are the bottleneck.
Okay, now here is where I want to pause and maybe push back a little on the strategy.
For it.
If the harvest is plentiful, meaning the time is now, and the need is desperate. People are helpless.
Yeah.
Why did he just send the disciples out immediately?
Ah.
Why does he ask them to do what seems like a tactical delay? He says, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers. Isn't praying just a waste of mission-critical time right then?
That is a crucial and I think a really valid question from a pure tactical standpoint. But the instruction to pray isn't a delay. It's a profound act of strategic reframing.
Okay, explain that.
Well, if the disciples had just rushed out, the pressure of this overwhelming, plentiful harvest would immediately fall on their very limited capacity.
And they burn out.
Instantly. By telling them to petition the Lord of the harvest, he's doing two non-negotiable things at once. First, he identifies the ultimate owner of the resources. The problem's too big for them, so they have to appeal to let's say, the ultimate CEO for more staff.
Okay.
But second, and more importantly, he shifts the scope of accountability. The mission's success doesn't depend on their own meager abilities, but on the grace and will of the divine source. It establishes dependency before execution.
So it's a dependency strategy, but it also manages the team's expectations about the scale of the problem.
Exactly.
To redefine success as alignment with the Lord of the harvest supply, not just their own individual output, that's actually a very sophisticated move.
It's a clear acknowledgement that the scope exceeds human capacity. You define the mission, you realize it's too big, so you seek staffing from the ultimate resource provider.
And then immediately after this reframing, or maybe even at the same time, we get section 3, the radical delegation. The text says, and he called to him his 12 disciples. The plan goes into action.
Right away.
Let's focus on the nature of this power transfer. The text says he gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every disease and every affliction. I mean, this is unprecedented.
The delegation is total and immediate. It goes way beyond standard management. From a technical standpoint, the Greek word for authority here is exousia.
Okay, exousia, what does that mean?
It's not just raw power or dynamis, the ability to do something spectacular. Exousia is the right, the legal warrant, the pre-authorized executive function to act on the owner's behalf.
Wow.
It's maximum delegation, the transfer of the legal right to use the full power necessary.
So he didn't give them training wheels. He gave them the master key and the legal right to operate the entire system.
He did.
He gave them the exousia to tackle every single complex and intractable problem he was facing himself.
And that level of trust is absolutely critical in a crisis. When the harvest is ripe, you can't afford phased, incremental training. You have to authorize your team to handle the full scope of the emergency right now.
But it wasn't a free-for-all.
No, you're right. The mission wasn't a general free-for-all. The instructions that followed were highly specific. First, the audience was tightly targeted. Go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Right.
This limitation is key. You get maximum power, but it's applied to a narrowly defined, high-priority constituency. They had a clear demographic and geographic target.
So the targeting limits the mission's scope, even while their authority remains total. What about the message itself?
The core message, the foundational deliverable, was very succinct. Proclaim, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That's the essential information.
But the credibility of that message.
Yeah.
They had to rest on their actions.
Yes, and this brings us to the most radical part of the mandate, the specific tasks. They were told to handle the four most demanding services imaginable all at once. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, cast out demons.
From an organizational perspective, that is just mind-boggling. I mean, those are four highly distinct forms of crisis intervention.
Medical, eschatological, public health, spiritual.
All of it. And they were delegated to handle all four with, no discernible specialized training.
Well, the implication for organizational design is that when the need is that overwhelming, the priority has to shift from specialization to maximum holistic empowerment.
Just solving the whole human problem they encounter.
Exactly. For instance, delegating the power to raise the dead. That's not just about reversing physical death. It's the ultimate statement of authority.
The power to reverse the irreversible.
Yes. When you give your team that kind of mandate, you are signaling that every perceived constraint, every impossibility is now within the realm of their authorized problem-solving capacity.
That completely reframed what true delegation means. It means entrusting the solution to the most impossible problems to the team you've just commissioned.
It does.
And finally, we circle all the way back to the ethical framework that governs this power, which connects to that initial compassion. The instruction at the end of the charge is, you receive without paying, give without pay.
And this is the fundamental constraint on their new exousia. The power, the healing, the ability to solve crises. It was all received as a gift.
So it must be shared freely.
It has to be. It's a direct mandate against commercializing necessary human services or spiritual power or even expertise. It ensures the mission stays aligned with its catalyst, genuine, unconditional compassion.
Okay, so if we synthesize this for you, the listener, the source material reveals this clear, high-velocity cycle for responding to a huge critical need. It starts with recognition of human need, that deep compassion for the sheep without a shepherd.
Right. That emotional recognition then forces a strategic call for an organized, properly staffed response, which is visualized by that petition to the Lord of the harvest.
And crucially, that urgency is immediately followed by the empowerment of delegates, the transfer of maximum authority, that exousia, and a mandate to address the totality of the crisis freely.
That's the cycle.
So what does this all mean for us today? The lessons from this deep dive into crisis delegation are, I think, surprisingly relevant.
I agree.
First, the power of observation. You have to move beyond just awareness to that visceral compassion, truly seeing the harassed and helpless state of the problem or the clients you serve.
It has to be felt.
Second, the strategic value of petition. When the harvest is plentiful and you're short-staffed, you have to recognize the problem exceeds your capacity and align with the ultimate source of resources.
Shifting away from just self-reliance.
Exactly. And third, the power of radical resource sharing. Once you delegate, you must give total exousia to your laborers, the authority to solve the hardest problems, and insist they operate on that principle of giving without pay, ensuring help flows freely. The whole narrative emphasizes that when you're faced with a vast critical need, the response wasn't cautious micromanagement or slow incremental training. It was radical delegation and the transfer of immense unprecedented authority.
The power to reverse the irreversible.
Right. And this raises an important question for you to consider. Where in your own life or your organization is the harvest plentiful and urgently ripe? And are you limiting your impact by failing to fully empower the laborers around you with the exousia they need to truly solve the deepest problems?
That is a powerful point to conclude on. The sources suggest that true scaling requires radical trust. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into compassion and delegation.
We look forward to having you back for the next one.